When it comes to horror movies, we've seen it all. Aliens, werewolves, vampires, homicidal clowns, and even creepy dolls.
I don't believe it. I just don't believe it.
With so much shock factor already out of the way though, there are still some movies that catch us off guard, especially those with endings that are horrifying head scratchers. Nothing scarier than walking away from a movie confused. So let's dive right into our nightmares and try to get some of these confusing horror movie endings explained. The Shining. Stanley Kubrick's iconic interpretation of Stephen King's novel The Shining took a lot of liberties with the source material and turned what was an elaborate hotel story into something much more cerebral. The psychic concept of Shining has spawned countless books and documentaries which have tried to make sense of the movie. But one thing we can all agree on is that after trying to murder his wife and son, Jack Nicholson's character most definitely froze to death outside of the Overlook Hotel there at the end. Yep. Dead. Fans might remember the sight of Danny and Wendy Torrance escaping in a snowmobile as the movie ends with a close-up of a framed photo hanging in the presumably haunted hotel. The picture is dated July 4th, 1921, with Jack Torrance smiling in front of a crowd of partygoers, which understandably is pretty perplexing. Some have theorized that Kubrick, a stickler for details in his movies, specifically posed Nicholson like this as a reference to old 18th century drawings of the devil. This would suggest that Doughboy Jack went to hell for trying to kill his family, regardless of whether his rampage was caused by the ghosts of the hotel or a particularly nasty strain of cabin fever. Jacob's Ladder. The 1990 psychological thriller Jacob's Ladder features Tim Robbins as Jacob Singer, a Vietnam War vet who is stabbed by a bayonet on the battlefield and returns to the States to a whole new life, where his cozy pre-war role as a husband and father is just a memory. Before being shipped off to the battlefield, Jacob had a wife and 3 sons, the youngest of whom, Gabe, died before he deployed. After returning from the war, he moves in with new girlfriend Jessie, but suffers from nightmarish visions of monsters and other surreal imagery. The film bounces back and forth between Jacob's realities, from his future life with Jessie to his past family, while he believes he's experiencing some kind of after effect from a chemical agent he was exposed to in Vietnam. Even worse, the events of the movie are revealed to be only happening in his mind, all while he lay dying from a stab wound on the field, just before the triage doctors declare him dead. Jacob mentally goes home to his apartment before the war and reunites with Gabe, who leads his father up their home staircase into a bright light. It's all pretty complicated, but in the end, the final scene seemed to mean that Jacob had finally found peace in the afterlife. In the Mouth of Madness. John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness lived up to its name by going off the deep end in ways that would make H.P. Lovecraft blush, and even outdid Inception with its story within a story metafiction motif. In the movie, Sam Neill plays John Trent, an insurance investigator sent to look for a famous record-breaking horror author named Sutter Kane, a moniker meant to pay homage to author Stephen King. Kane goes missing just as his next bestseller, take a wild guess what it's called, was expected to break world records. So Trent treks off to New England to search for the author and ends up reliving many parts of Kane's stories. In the movie, Kane's novel is so embraced by the masses that his stories actually unleash a bunch of deities from another dimension, intent on taking over the world, and Trent discovers he's actually just a character in Kane's story.
I'm not a piece of fiction.
What's even crazier is that Kane turns out to be the portal through which these monsters emerged. Neil's character eventually wakes up in a rundown psychiatric ward and discovered the world around him descending into hell, with widespread suicides and murders as monsters roam the earth. Through all the madness afoot, Trent finds a movie theater playing the theatrical version of Kane's book, and in another layer of weird, the movie replays all of his experiences, affirming that he really was a Sutter Kane character all along, and only became real as the story unfolded. Did you get all that? Let the right one in. This Swedish vampire love story, and we're talking about the original here, not the 2010 remake, Let Me In, introduces Oscar, a 12-year-old bully victim who makes pals with a secret blood drinker named Ely. Oscar wants revenge against his cruel school-age tormentors, and Ely is all too happy to oblige. But there's a catch. See, Ely lives with an old man named Harkon, who tries to get in the way of Oscar's relationship with Ely, because he doesn't want to be replaced as her food source provider. Harkon is eventually caught in the act of scaring up some lunch for the girl and splashes acid on his face to keep his identity secret before offering up his own life as a drink for Ely. At the end of the movie, after Ely's done away with the meanies in Oscar's life, the two run away together, and their last scene together shows Ely in a large box next to Oscar on a train, talking to each other through Morse code. It looks like Oscar is probably on his way to growing old and repeating the life of the late Harkon, who was probably once a little boy who loved Ely too. And the film ends on that suggestive note. Just just as Jan Ajvid Lindqvist's novel of the same name had. However, the movie neglects to include the author's epilogue. Lindqvist didn't like the popular theory that Oscar was becoming the new Hakan at the end of the story, and penned a subsequent short story called Let the Old Dreams Die, which shows Ely and Oscar in a photo from 2008, almost 3 decades after the events of the story. The couple still appears young and in love, implying that Oscar actually joins his girlfriend in a mortal undeadness. Thanks for watching. For more spooky videos, our friends at Grunge recently published a video about the scariest clowns caught on camera. Click the video here or the link in our description to watch it now. If you like Looper, you'll love Grunge. The same team makes videos for both channels.